Welcome to the Business with No Limits podcast, where we talk to businesses who are making an impact in their community and we gain insights from how they've grown their business and the journey that they've been on. I'm Justin Charlton Jones. I'm one of the coaches behind the No Limits community, and today I'm speaking to Jenna Wilson of Little Dreams Consulting.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Jenna. Now, Jenna is a baby and child sleep consultant. And she works with tired parents around the UK to help everybody get a better night's sleep. She's a member of the British Sleep Society and the Association of Professional Sleep Consultants, which is already making me feel quite tired. So, Jenna, first of all, thank you very much for taking the time to join us today and to share some of your story about Little Dreams. And to start with, could you just tell me a little bit about what it is that you actually do? So being a child sleep consultant sounds fascinating, but what is it that you actually do and what services do you offer to your clients?
So we work on a one-to-one basis mainly with our clients. So parents will call us up, we'll have a free chat with them to make sure that we can help, which as yet, touch wood, there hasn't been a family we haven't been able to help, and that we're the right fit for their parenting style. They'll fill in a questionnaire, send it back to us, and we'll prepare a bespoke plan for them, meet with them, talk them through the plan, and then we support them while they're implementing the plan. So that can look at, that's by way of emails and phone calls, but we also analyze sleep logs. So I've been doing this for 8 years now, and I've been able to speak to clients on a morning after they've had perhaps a tricky night, and I've been able to tell them that their little one has a tooth come through and they haven't even noticed it themselves, or that their little one perhaps had reflux. Or I had a family a few weeks ago where their little one had very, very dangerously low iron levels, and obviously I'm not medical, I couldn't tell them that, but I could tell them that there was something going on that wasn't sleep, and then after they went to the doctor, this got diagnosed. So sleep logs can really tell us a lot. We also run corporate seminars for companies who really invest in their well-being of their employees, and we also run a Better Sleep for Schools program where we give free advice to parents and for teachers initially, and then if the schools want to go further, we then do a live seminar for all the parents.
That sounds fascinating, and I'm intrigued by some of the things you were able to effectively diagnose just by analysing child sleep patterns.
It's amazing. I love it. I'm not medically trained at all, but just by looking at the sleep logs, I can kind of give you a rough idea of what's going on with your little one.
Yeah, but from what you were saying to me previously, you're a solicitor by background originally, so
I was.
you presumably have quite an analytical head.
I think that's why it works so well. Yeah, I was a solicitor for 12 years and then had my middle son. I've got 3 children, had my middle child, went back to being a solicitor, decided I didn't love it anymore, and then couldn't quite work out what to do. So used actually a coach to kind of work through, some ideas I had. And then long story short, retrained when I was pregnant with my daughter in 2016.
Right. And just out of curiosity, had you ever had sleep problems with your 2 oldest children?
I hadn't, but I was very, very routine led. So I think I always feel that's a little bit disappointing when I kind of say no. But I think I preempted problems. So I kind of almost made sure that we didn't have problems because I was very strict is too strong of a word for little ones, but I was very clear about what we needed to do and when we needed to do it. So I think that's probably why I was quite lucky.
Yeah, and taking my coach's hat off now, I completely understand what you're saying, because we had terrible problems with my eldest son, my first child, when he was I can't remember, probably about 5 or 6 months old, and it was the routine that it was creating a routine that sorted it out, or that broke the pattern of behavior that he had developed. And I can't remember the name of the book. I just remember that we would put him down to sleep, and literally within minutes he would stand up and he'd start screaming, and he'd even make himself sick sometimes. And he just wouldn't stop. He would just
Mm.
go in to see him, and I was talking about this with one of the other directors at the company I worked with, and she said, "Well, funnily enough, I had the same problem with my child. You need this book," and I wish I could remember the name of it. And it was lunchtime, so I said, "Right, cancel my 2 o'clock meeting." I drove into Stratford-on-Avon. I went to the Waterstones, whatever it was in the town. I bought the book. I'd read it by the end of the afternoon, and we started on this routine of sort of periodic intervention where
Was
you
it perhaps
space out.
Richard Ferber? Was perhaps the book?
I'm not sure, but you space out the interventions. So you go in and see them, but you don't pick them up, you don't touch them, you just reassure them, and then you leave again, and
Mm.
you do it every minute, and then you go back in 3, and then in 5, and then it's 5-minute intervals until they finally go to sleep, and then you extend the intervals, and finally, and literally within 3 or 4 days, he was sleeping normally.
Good.
But anyway, but I understand the importance of routine. So, if I was to ask you, what are the biggest learnings that you've had since you began your sort of time as the owner of your own business?
Mm. The biggest one, because obviously we also franchised. So we franchised 2.5 years ago. So we also
Yeah.
have a franchise of Little Dreams. We've got 6 territories. And I think for both of, either when we're speaking to clients initially or speaking to potential franchisees, I would 100% say the biggest learning, I think that both my business partner and I would agree on, is to trust your gut. There have been times where we've been like, oh, we've got a bit of a feeling, and we've been like, no, we're being ridiculous, let's carry on. And then we've looked back and said, we knew that we shouldn't have done whatever it was, or we should have done whatever it was. So yeah, I would absolutely say that that's our biggest learning, is to trust your gut, because your gut knows, I think, before your brain does.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and actually, one of the techniques that I use with clients is a technique for decision making.
Mm,
It's the brain method. I don't know if you've come across that,
I
where
have, yeah.
you have a number of different options. You analyze what are the top 3 benefits, what are the risks, what are the alternatives. But the I in brain is, what's your gut instinct saying to
Yeah.
you? And very often, by the time you've been through, you've outlined what the risks and benefits are of the different options, and you've thought about the alternatives, your gut is probably right.
Mm,
In fact, very few people that I've used that technique with have not been able to come to a decision. It's not been obvious to them.
mm.
By the time we get to that one, what's your gut saying? Yep.
Yeah, I think that would be my biggest one.
Right. No, that's great. And if you were starting again in your business, are there any particular things that you've done which, with the benefit of hindsight now, you think, well, actually, do you know what? I think I'd do that differently second time around.
Um, Probably have. So it was tricky because we obviously started and then we had COVID, and we pivoted quite a lot. I think we're quite good, I would like to say, as a team and now a partnership, with making decisions very quickly. We'll have trial things and make decisions quickly. But I think probably what I would do is be more budget aware in relation to marketing. I
Yeah.
think it's perhaps something that we didn't really think about hugely, or what the impact it would have on the business. So I think that's probably the only, well, maybe one of the only things that I would change, is A, be more mindful of it, and B, do it more quickly, rather than just sort of relying on slowly building it up. I think kind of, I suppose, paid for marketing. We would probably do that more quickly than we did.
Okay. So when you say budget aware, what your did you actually set yourself a budget for marketing when you began?
Not one that was big enough.
Right. Okay. But you did have a budget, and you said, right, well, we're going to spend this much on marketing. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And I think in the first year that was totally fine. But I'm thinking more now of the franchise. Obviously, the debacle of 18 months ago, that caused ructions.
Yes.
Well, I think after that we then realized actually we probably should have, paid a little bit more for marketing at that point. But otherwise, I think, as a consulting company, but also as the franchise, we are really quite good at standing back after every decision we've made, analysing it, and then changing it if we need to.
Yeah. Well, you probably know that within Action Coach, one of our favorite phrases is test and measure. And yeah, measurement is absolutely key. So did you set up measurement processes that would allow you to sort of gauge the effects of your marketing?
Yeah, from the very beginning, we've always analysed our data, even our NPS score, even from the very beginning, we were like tiny when it was just me. And our NPS score in the beginning, and it's still in the 90s, but it was sort of 96 at the very beginning,
Yeah.
which is pretty decent. But we measure and analyse everything. We every 3 months, Faye and I especially have a meeting in relation to all the marketing data, everything that we've invested in, and then we have a decision about, which ones are we keeping, which ones are we getting rid of, and then which ones are we going to test? Where's the next 3 months of testing coming from? And then we reanalyze again. And
yeah,
that's what we do.
Oh, well, that's music to my ears, hearing you describing that process of decision making, measurement, and then testing again.
Oh, good.
That's and if only every business owner would be as disciplined about that aspect, then I think they would have far fewer questions about their marketing activity. So just thinking about your marketing then. What marketing tactics have you tried, and which have been the most successful for you?
So I think we've got two businesses. So we've got the sleep side of things,
Yeah.
and a lot of that comes from word of mouth. Because of course tired parents talk, or no longer tired parents will talk to tired parents and recommend us. So with that, we tend to do a lot of events. Our franchisees will go to a lot of in-person events and classes and that sort of thing. With our franchise, we tend to do, with the franchise, we're looking for people who are not looking for a franchise. So that's a tricky position to be in. So we have to do quite a lot of education. So we're on social media quite a lot in relation to education about franchising, even before we're kind of talking to people about what we do, because they need to understand that they can, run their own business, similar to Action Coach, they run their own business, but with support. And so that's kind of what we concentrate quite a lot on with the franchise side of things, is social media, because a lot of our target franchisees will be on there not knowing that they're our target franchisees, or that they should consider a franchise.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's fascinating. And which social media do you find works best for you, or which ones?
Facebook and Instagram, I would say the most. We're on LinkedIn and TikTok and YouTube. I'm not the big, I don't think any of us are the biggest fan of any of them, but Instagram and Facebook, I would say there. I guess if you're looking at, you're kind of looking at ages, don't you? So if you're in your 40s, you're probably more likely to be on Facebook. If you're in your 30s, you're more likely to be on Insta. If you're in your 20s, you're more likely to be on TikTok, which is probably why I struggle with it so much. Very, very, very broadly speaking. So yeah, we kind of, Facebook and Instagram work best for us.
You don't have to put together little dance routines for your messaging on TikTok.
No, although there is a franchisor, Anne-Marie Martin from Diddy Dance, who is huge on TikTok with her dances. So do go and have a look at her there. She's part of the franchise consortium, the best franchisees that we're part of. So yeah, it's definitely worth having a look on there at her dances.
And you've raised a very interesting point there, talking about all those various social media channels that you're using. Something which I think, again, people don't always recognize, or not immediately, which is that whilst there's a degree of overlap between all of them, actually they do tend to have relatively discrete audiences. And that if you're going to, a lot of people say, well, if I'm putting out this message, this post, this whatever it is onto Facebook, I can't. I've got to think of something else for Instagram, or something else for LinkedIn. Well, actually, no, you don't, because the chances of coming across the message that you're putting out on one channel on all 3, 4, or 5 is actually pretty remote.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm very conscious I made a huge generalization there about the age ranges, but sort of very basically, you don't necessarily get everybody on each one. And we do a lot of cross posting and, you know, using pieces from Facebook to perhaps go on TikTok and that sort of thing, which
Yeah,
makes it
so
easy.
it is. It makes it much more economical, much more efficient in terms
And
of.
realistic, because I think it's
And
the consistency that's important. Whereas if you sort of, you know, for a month do loads of different things on different places and then you don't do anything for a couple of months, all of the social media channels go, oh well, we're not your friend anymore. Now you're going to have to work even harder. So, you know, the
yes.
consistency is really important.
Yeah, and I think that that is an absolutely key message for anybody using, well, any marketing activity at all. The key to marketing success is consistency, but
Yeah.
particularly on things like social media, where, as you say, the algorithms will recognize your level of activity, the level of engagement that you're creating, and reward you for it, but also punish you if you fail to maintain that level of activity.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, the great thing that people often forget is that with all marketing activity, people need to see your message numerous times before they actually remember it. That's why when we watch television,
Mm.
you see the same ads on television on a regular basis, because the people who pay millions of pounds for those ads know that you need to see them more than once.
Yes.
You know, some ads need to be seen 6, 7, 8 times, some only 2 or
Mm.
3, depending on how well they work. But your social media activity is exactly the same. It doesn't matter if somebody sees that same ad 2, 3, 4 times, or the same post or whatever. It reinforces the message. And in
Mm.
fact, there's a good chance they might actually remember it the third time after they've read it.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so obviously social media is really big for you, particularly I think in terms of the consultancy side, getting your clients. Are there any other forms of marketing that you've used that have been successful for you?
We just try and be everywhere. You know, we'll go to all the, for example, John Lewis events. We'll go on, you know, I love a chat about anything to do with sleep or business. So we'll be on any sleep podcasts or any business podcasts. Not any, you know, obviously we're very choosy, but we, you know, we certainly just try and be everywhere. And we have a lot of collaborations as well with sort of some of the perhaps bigger companies or the bigger brands when it comes to certainly children and babies. So for example, Scandibon will often do work with them, and we'll kind of then have collaborations with Adventure Photography, for example, and you know, a lot of other franchises too. So we certainly just try and be everywhere, and just, you know, which people often say, "Gosh, you know, I see you everywhere," and I'm like, "Brilliant! That's what we want. That's what we want
Absolutely.
to be." But
Your marketing is working.
they're just everywhere. I think people get to a point where people are fed up of us, though. I think we'll have to be cautious of that.
Well, but there's a lesson in there, because again, I'm old enough to remember the pre-social media days,
As am I.
and there were always adverts on TV that we found really annoying.
Mm.
Like, someone would come out and it would annoy the hell out of you, and you couldn't escape it. You'd always be seeing it, but my goodness, you remembered it.
Yeah. And the tunes would be in your head as well.
Yeah.
The tunes wouldn't, you know, as soon as someone says something, I was showing my children, you know, some of the adverts from obviously when I was a child, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, this is crazy!" And some of the things, you know, you wouldn't be able to do nowadays, and you know, some of the pranks and that sort of thing for some of the, you know, the drinks and what have you. But they were like, "Oh my
Yes.
gosh, this is crazy!"
Yes. You've just made me think of Tango there.
It's exactly what I was thinking of.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
You
the
can't
one I was showing them.
you can't have a big fat orange man running up and slapping you around the
Smacking
face
people. No,
anymore.
that's exactly the one I was showing them.
Yeah. Okay. And just out of interest, are there any marketing tactics that you've tried and you found simply didn't work for you? You've given up on?
I think it's tricky to know, because as you said, you know, it's really important to have so many touch points. And I think, you know, historically, back when there perhaps wasn't so much social media, you know, the estimate was, you know, between 7 and 11.
Mm.
Whereas now, of course, because social media is everywhere, the estimation is that that's gone up, you
Mm.
know, to sort of 15, 20, depending on what people are buying. You know, if they're buying a necklace, it might be slightly less times than if they're sort of, you know, changing their career to a franchise.
Yeah.
And so I don't think necessarily, that we can easily, other than one thing which I'll come into in a second, easily say that there's things that haven't worked for us. We've perhaps been exhibited at shows that perhaps haven't been as successful as we'd hoped, perhaps because our target market wasn't there. But again, it's a test and let's see what happens. I'm very much of the, well, let's try it. And if it doesn't work, then we'll make that decision. But I think, I'd much rather try something and then decide that it didn't work than think, well, it might have worked, because for all the things that we have tried, there are going to be a number of things that do work.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And once you know they work, you keep on doing them until you can discover that they don't work.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's never. Right. So you've got 3 children, Jen. So how do you, and I can, because a lot of women set up businesses, and very often they're faced with this conundrum of how do you balance being a mother and being a business owner at the same time. How do you balance, your personal time with a family of 3 and running a successful business?
It's one of the reasons that we set up the franchise, actually. So I was very clear in that I wanted to be, and my husband is as well. And so we're very clear that we want to be very present parents. And I think one of the main things about what we do and what we have is that it's not as structured as other businesses might be. So we're not tied to, for example, class timetables and that sort of thing. We can completely run our own diaries around our family commitments. Obviously, my children are now all at school. Previously, I would work it around nursery and that sort of thing. And so I'm able to, because there's no, well, I have to do a class at 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock and 12 o'clock on a Monday, for example. I can think, oh, well, we've got the dance recital or the assembly with the whatever it might be, certificates on that morning. Right, well, I'll just mark an hour or 2 out there. And that's why we wanted to set up the franchise, to enable other, mostly women, obviously, men are very welcome as well, but to kind of have a career that they could be proud of, but that also would work very well around their family. But at the same time, I have a very, I was going to say very supportive husband. He is a very active dad. We are both parents. It's obviously easier for me sometimes to pick up things because I'm the one that runs the company, so I can say, oh, actually, he's a director level as well. But I think it kind of almost is a really important point to make, that actually we probably get more mum guilt than dad. I don't think dad guilt exists, having spoken to my husband. But I think it's really important that everyone has a level playing field, and then there's a choice that if you want to be a stay-at-home mum or a stay-at-home dad, that can be a choice, and that's relatively easy. But actually, if you want to run a business or be a director, then that's also equally a choice for everybody. But yeah, the 2 main things are that it's an incredibly flexible career. I can set my own diary, but also, I do have a partner who is a husband who is very, very, well, he's a dad. And, it's not just me that is expected to do all the things.
Great. So it sounds like phenomenal teamwork going on in the...
That's the plan.
in the Wilson household.
Not always seamless, I will say, but that's the theory behind it.
Yeah.
My daughter, who is 7, decides that when she has children, she's going to come back here, and then I'm going to look after the child, and my husband is going to cook all the food for them, and then she's just going to sit and have a relax because she'll be tired, because my husband does the majority of the cooking in our house. So that's her plan. That's her life plan. She's to have children, come back, I'll look after the children, and Daddy will do all the cooking.
Right. It sounds like you need to downsize before she gets married.
Yeah. Although I'm quite up for it. My husband loves cooking, so I think it'll work quite well.
Right. Well, we'll
see where we are in a couple
knowing the age of your daughter, I think you've got a few years yet.
Got a while.
Before you need to start worrying about that. Yeah. Okay. So in terms of the business, you mentioned at the beginning when we were talking about marketing, about being sort of budget aware. Have you always been quite sort of strong on the financial management of the business?
Yes, it's probably both my business partner and I least favorite thing to sit down and discuss. And we've probably become much more focused on it as we've grown. Just by virtue of necessity, when you're smaller, you don't necessarily need to be as on it as we are now, because there's less things going out, and if it's just you, it's that's not big of a deal. Whereas certainly in the past sort of since we franchised, we are very, very on it with the finances. We have a a meeting that we don't enjoy every month, just to make sure we're on top of things, to check things, and then we have a yearly, obviously, goal planning and budgeting session for the following year. As I said, we had been on, or we're on, the NatWest Accelerator, and they're very, very clear about things like that. We started that about 18 months ago, so we did tweak some things, having been on that. But yes, it's neither of us are love it, but it's a necessary evil that we just think, right, we'll just do it, because I think, as with all these things, there's always going to be something, especially if you're by yourself, there's always going to be something that's not necessarily going to be your strong suit. Faye and I are very lucky in that she really loves the kind of the back office stuff, the systems. I literally emailed her yesterday and said, "Oh, I've got an idea for something." She said, "Oh, great, I'll send her a spreadsheet." So that tends to be what happens. I'm like, right, I've got these ideas. This is what we're going to do. We're going to do this collab and this brand, and this is what. And then she's like, right, I'll get out all the spreadsheets, or if there's a question the franchisees have about the systems, they'll contact her, whereas I'm all about kind of driving business forward. So I think between us, we cover pretty much everything and enjoy everything, but neither of us love the finance side of things.
Okay, but as you said, it's very important, and I'm always saying to my clients within Action Coach generally, as you probably know, we have this 6-step framework that we use, and the bottom level of that framework is mastery, which includes planning, which I was very excited when you started talking about the plans that you're making, to hear that that's something that you actively do. It's the other aspects in that lowest step are time management, the delivery of your service, and the finances. And I'm always saying to business owners, you have got to have a monthly P&L, you have got to have a cash flow forecast, and you must have a budget, which a lot of people don't always do. Because without a budget, you've got nothing to compare your P&L to. There's nothing to hold you accountable. There's nothing to actually push you towards achieving the revenue targets or the profit targets that you've set in the business. Or maybe you haven't set. Yeah. So that's great. And so in terms of setting goals for the business, my first question is, do you know what your business looks like when it's finished?
Yes. Well, in a very brief sense,
That's great.
both are very, we both know where we want to be in the time scale, and what we want out of it at the end, which are kind of very different things. But and not anytime soon as well. I would hasten to add, I can't envisage a time really that I'm not in some way, shape, or form involved in Little Dreams and the franchise side of things, however that looks. I may well be on a beach in the Maldives somewhere, sipping a cocktail whilst giving advice to somebody. That's my kind of idea. But yes, we have an idea, not in a huge amount of detail, because I think of the time scale, we're not looking to exit in the next few years. That's not what we set this up a couple of years ago. But yeah, I'm also very much a dream big kind of a girl. So I'm the one, kind of pushing our goals, but we have, yearly goals and 3 yearly goals and 5 yearly goals. We tend not to go before, the 5 yearly ones are always in flux. We tend not to have sort of set specific goals beyond 3 years, because I think it's tricky to, especially having not even been 3 years old, it's then tricky to envisage where you're going to be in 3 years' time. But yeah, we definitely have ideas and clear views of where we want to end up.
Oh, well, that's wonderful. And again, I love to hear a business owner who's got those visions and that ambition. And you're absolutely right. With most of my clients, when we're looking at planning, the 5-year goal, if that's the time period we choose, is always a very broad brush description of what the business looks like, because you know, things change quickly enough in 6 months,
Yes.
let alone in 5 years. So having anything more concrete than that can be quite
Tricky.
can be quite tricky to settle on. Yes. So that broad brush goal gives you the direction of travel. That's what you're aiming at.
Yeah.
Actually, it's the short-term goals. And do you do quarterly planning?
We do backcasting as well. So
Yeah.
kind of from our goals, we kind of backcast and kind of, you know, plan for these monthly. It's not in sort of short term, because obviously you know, especially with our franchisees, if we're looking to take on a franchisee, if we're talking to someone today who's just new to the idea of franchising, it's not going to be something that they're looking to commit to for sort of 6 months to a year. And you know, we're not looking to take on hundreds of franchisees every year. You know, we kind of want 4 to 5 maximum to maintain standards at the present time. But yes, in a word, we spend a lot of time analyzing and planning, and you know, at least
Yeah.
a day or two a month on that.
That's great. That's great to hear. Now, the fact that you've got a franchise is fascinating. Partly because, as you know, Action Coach is a franchise, but also because when people are thinking about their long-term vision for their businesses, very often what is top of mind for most business owners is, I need an exit strategy, I need to sell.
Mm.
When in fact, that is just one of a number of different options that are available to you, and obviously franchising is an option that's available to a lot of different types of business. What triggered the thought of turning your business into a franchise? What led you down that route?
It was a friend who happened to be on the board of directors of the BFA at the time, years ago, who had said, "Oh, your business."
So I was
Oh,
going to
sorry,
say,
the British Franchise Association,
for
yes.
those who are listening, yes, that's the British Franchise Association. Yeah.
And said, "Oh, your business would be perfect to franchise." And I said, "Oh, okay, yeah." Anyway, would you like a drink? And it was only as we, you know, Little Dreams really grew very, very quickly from the very beginning. And, you know, I took on Faye, who's my business partner, and then we were sort of employing more and more consultants. And we thought, you know, we need to have a plan for this expansion, because it's, especially in COVID, we took everything online, and we were very fortunate to be able to do that. And our business, you know, really expanded a lot during COVID. Which of course was an awful time, but you know, from a business perspective, it really went wild. And so I then, you know, harked back to this conversation and said, well, actually, let's have a look into this a little bit more. So we watched the British Franchise Association have a prospective franchisor certificate on their website. So we looked into that and thought, oh, you know, this could be quite good. And so then we enlisted the help of some British Franchise Association accredited consultants and solicitors, and it went from there, really. So yeah, we launched in December 2021, so just over 2.5 years ago. That's where it came from. That's where the idea, it was just, you know, someone's comment. That's where it came from.
And were you even really aware of the concept of franchising prior to that?
Not really, not beyond, probably, you know, really probably not much beyond what a lot of our potential franchisees are, who kind of think, oh, McDonald's is a franchise, and you know, do I know any other oh, I don't know if I know much more. So you know, the huge franchises, whereas actually the more, you're probably the same, the more you're in the world of franchising, you realize that actually huge amounts of the businesses that you hear about on a day-to-day basis are franchises.
Yes, they are. Yeah, yeah. Okay, no, that's fascinating. It's amazing how serendipity plays a role in steering the course of our
I think so.
our choices sometimes. Yeah, yeah. So looking back, looking back to the start of your business journey, or possibly even earlier, what advice would you have given to your younger self if you were able to go back and talk to Jenna, you know, 10 years ago or whatever?
Oh, that is a good one. I would probably say, well, I would say do it. You know, absolutely. It's something that you know, leaving the law was such a huge jump. as you can imagine, because you train for 6 years, you put a lot of money and time and effort into it. And I ammed and ahed about it for quite some time. But yeah, the first thing I would say is, yeah, do it, you won't regret it. But secondly, I would say which is what I did, get advice, get some support from perhaps people who've done this before, or people who have been through this. And I probably didn't do it as much as I perhaps should have done in the early days with Little Dreams, the original company. Talk to people who know more than you do about the business journey. So obviously, I had a lot of training in relation to the sleep side of things, and I did have support from the company that I originally trained with. But I think kind of in relation to the business side of things, I think being more open to the business side of things, I was very much concentrating on sleep.
Yeah.
And not really thinking about growing the business. Whereas, I don't regret the rate at which it grew, because it worked for me. But I think having the knowledge about it and then making a choice, a decision, would have been helpful.
Okay. Yeah. And I think that is, I think, the perennial problem for most business owners. I don't know whether you've read the book The E-Myth.
No, I'll put that on my list though.
Okay. Which is the myth about entrepreneurs. So there is a tendency for people to call business owners entrepreneurs, when actually most business owners aren't entrepreneurs. They're doing a job. They're running a business which delivers a particular product or service which they are very good at and skilled at, or passionate about. But there's a subtle distinction between being a genuine entrepreneur and being somebody who owns a business.
Yes.
And most business owners, because they follow a passion or a skill that they have, don't go to business school, and they don't know what they don't know. And yes, so I think your advice about talk to somebody who knows more about it than you do, who's perhaps been there and done it, is great. Okay, so one last question to finish off with, Jenna, which is one that I might have missed and not asked you. What question should I have asked you about your business journey that I haven't done?
Gosh. Oh, I don't know. Because I think I just talk around everything. I talk around all aspects of things. What one thing would you have liked to have known that you didn't ask me?
Well, I don't know. I'm just wondering. No, I think you've been remarkably forthcoming and very open about the journey that you've been on and the experiences that you've gone through, which I think has been fascinating to listen to. And I think certainly I feel that thinking about what we've discussed, there are lots of little nuggets in there of really useful information and learnings that people can get from.
I hope so.
What you've done, which will hopefully inspire them or give them ideas that they can use within their own business, which is very much the purpose of this podcast.
Fingers crossed.
Okay, so thank you very much, Jenna from Little Dreams Consulting.
Thank you for having me.
If any of our listeners want to get in touch with you in future, if anyone in particular has a child that isn't sleeping at the moment, where do they go to find you?
So obviously we have a website, which is littledreamsconsulting.com, or they can email me, Jenna, Jenna, at littledreamsconsulting.com. And obviously if anyone's looking for a franchise as well, they're very welcome to have a look. But as I said earlier, we're on all the social media. So if you just have a look for Little Dreams Consulting, then you'll find us pretty much on all the social media as well.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's great. Well, thank you very much indeed, Jenna.
Thank you so much.
As I said, it's been a fascinating story, and it's been great to learn all about your journey with Little Dreams. And I hope that 5-year goal is achieved in the next 5 years. I'll be fascinated to see whether you get there or not.
I'll come and tell you.
Sure, well, I'm sure you'll actually exceed it, because the great thing is
I'll be sat on a beach earlier.
Yeah. Well, if you have a plan, you're more likely to succeed. And if you review that plan and you have a regular planning process within your business, the chances of achieving your goals are so much greater.
Definitely.
Okay. Anyway, but thank you very much indeed, Jenna.
Thank you so much.